Chaim Bracha. The clothing make the man. Actually, it's an interesting statement. Why is it's clothes that make the man? How about the woman? You would think even more so the woman. And perhaps maybe that's what the statement means. I don't know. But curious. But what's that mean that the clothes make the man? How could that be? How's that possible? I mean, aren't we more virtuous in who we are? Didn't we not learn last night in the JLI class that we are whole, complete, and worthy? Not because we did something, because we are something. We're part of the divine, created in the image of God. Just as God is worthy just because he's God, so likewise we're worthy just because we're created by God. Not just created by God, because this cup is also created by God, right? But this is only created in God for a function. It's a means to an end. Every human being is an end in themselves, being created in the image of God, so they have godly qualities. So if that's the case, how could it be that the clothes make the man? So one way we can understand it, they enhance the person. That makes sense. They enhance the individual. Just like jewelry enhances, just like his makeup enhances. So it doesn't make you, it just enhances you. That would make sense. But that phrase still sounds like as if it is making you. How do we understand that? Or is there reason to understand that it's only a, colloquial statement of our culture? And maybe it's just, don't take it so seriously. Right? Actually, what we're going to see from in Judaism, as Tanya will teach us, indeed, it's clothes that make the man. Literally. Of course, what clothes are we talking about? Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're in the 4th chapter. Brief review. Chapter 1, Neshamas, 2 souls. We establish. Chapter 2, we speak about the second soul, that it's a part, chelik, in one word, a part of God. Right? That's its core essence, part of God, as opposed to everything in creation is not a part of God. It's created by God. It's not removed from God, but it's not a part of, if you will. And then chapter 3, we learned that this part of God, which is the soul that we have, the divine soul in us, has 10 qualities because God has 10 attributes, so we have 10 qualities. 3 intellectual, Chabad, and 7 emotional. Chapter 4 now, in one word, is levushim, garments. And today we're going to learn it's the garments that make the man and the woman, by the way. Just the same. What does that mean? How do we understand that? What are the garments? Well, we explained garments are something you can take on and off. That refers to our thoughts, willful, cogitated thoughts, our words, speech, and our action, maisa. We could choose them. I could choose how to act. I could choose what words I want to say. Are going to be nice words that are uplifting, or going to be words that are, knock down somebody? I can choose what I'm going to think. Even though maybe a negative thought entered my mind, I don't have to think it. I could choose to think something else. I could put on whatever garment of thought I want. or talk or act. That's why it's called a garment. And the divine soul's garments, meaning its thought, speech, and action, is, of course, in reference to God. It's the divine soul. So the divine soul, when it thinks the words of Torah, like we're doing now, and how do you know you're thinking words of Torah? Well, if you're comprehending what we're teaching, that means you have to think it. Because if your thoughts are elsewhere, then you're not comprehending what we're learning. Then you don't have a mitzvah of study of Torah. Right? It's the mitzvah, which is God's thing, that's one with God, but us, with me and you learning it, that's engaging our thoughts. Speech, for me, and also in prayer, will engage the divine soul in connecting to God through a mitzvah of prayer, for example. And then, of course, action of a mitzvah, that when I do the mitzvah, I bind myself with God. The act of putting on tefillin, the act of contributing and giving charity, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what we learned in brief previously. Now the Alter Rebbe takes us a step further, that the garments are derived from the Torah and the commandments that we fulfill, even though we call them merely garments, right? I mean, how important are the garments compared to me? Nothing. I'm more important than the garments. Yes, they enhance in the human condition. They enhance us. They protect from the cold. But they're not more important than me. But here there's a difference, though. Actually, even though they're called only garments of the soul, they're greater than the soul itself. What does that mean? Because the soul itself and the love that the soul has, the connection that the soul has, is not as great as the connection you have through doing a mitzvah or studying Torah. It's infinitely greater. What does that mean? Well, the Torah that we're learning right now, for example, right? Use this as an example. The Zohar says that the Torah and God are entirely one. What does that mean? Well, the Torah is God's wisdom and his will. His wisdom is one with him. If you recall, we spoke about in chapter 2 that Torah is the knowledge of God. He is the knower. He is the knowledge, and he is the known all at once. By us, there's three separate entities, right? Me is the knower, my brain is the knowledge, and then what I'm learning right now is the known. There's three separate entities. By God, they're all one. So therefore, Torah knowledge is one with God. Right? We learned that at great length, right? Totally one with God. Okay. So, but the question would be then, well, God is infinitely beyond us. So if that's the case, then his Torah has to be infinitely beyond us. If it's one with him, right? So where is the comprehension in my thoughts, right? Thoughts means that you think words of Torah and you comprehend them. If you don't comprehend them, then you don't have Torah. You don't have the mitzvah. Well, how are you going to comprehend something that's one with God, that is infinite? As God is infinitely beyond us, so is his Torah. Is that clear? So follow. This is what God did. And only God could do this, right? What did God do? He took that which is infinite. Let's, this is not infinite, but let's, just for the sake of, he took something that's infinite. And you know what he did? He compressed it. And it made it into finite terms, into finite words, finite ideas. Well, how do you do that? Oh, I can't do that. You can't do that. But guess what? God could, right? He could do that, right? And what did he do? He took that infinite wisdom, compressed it, if you will, into 613 commandments of the Torah and its laws. And he put them into letters that are in the 5 books of Moses, in the prophets and the writings. And not only that, he also put them in the oral tradition, right? Which is later was written down. All of that is his divine wisdom that's one with him. And now it is infinity compressed into finite words, finite ideas, finite commandments to do something finite. And yet at the same time, when I think the words of Torah, speak the words of Torah, do the actions of a mitzvah, what do I have? My faculties of my soul, my being is now, through my thought, speech, and action, bound up with the infinite of God. Is that clear? Therefore, for us to be able to appreciate ideas like this that are very profound and very deep and a little abstract, it's a bit abstract, we need metaphors. That's why the Torah metaphorically is like water. Why is it compared to water? Because water starts on top of the mountain, right? For the metaphor, I mean, water can come from the clouds, obviously, but it comes from the top of the mountain and comes down all the way down to the bottom. It goes to the lowest point, right? We know that water is able to get to the lowest point, right? So unlike light, the light that leaves the source is not the same as it can't come when it comes down. It's not the same thing anymore, right? It's diffused. It's not the same, right? If we were a million miles closer, or even just 10,000 miles closer, we'd be, we disintegrate, be too hot, right? But if you were 93 million miles, right, be very different. Water, though, it's the same at the top of the mountain, at the bottom of the mountain, right? We think of Torah, Torah on high is a great light of God. Down here, it's a lesser light. No, it's not metaphorically. And we do speak about Torah being light, how it brings light to us. But Torah itself is metaphorically water. The same on top of the mountain, the bottom of the mountain. When we make the blessing over the Torah every morning, or when we have an aliyah to the Torah, Asher Nasan Lanu is Torah so, that he gave us his Torah. The way it's on high, we have it down here below. That which is on high, which no person can comprehend, it's beyond us, journeyed and descended down here below, that water of life, that elixir of life, right, through what we call the chain reaction from above to below. And where did it rest itself? In material things. Material things to do a mitzvah with, like leather from a hide of an animal to put on tefillin or a mezuzah or a Torah scroll, or in the material things that the Torah speaks about, right? In physical letters. Now, Torah is in physical letters. Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Those letters are physical letters that have a shape. Each letter has its shape, the way it needs to be written. And the combination of them, as it's written in ink in the 24 books of the Torah, came down, journeyed down here. It journeyed down here into the physical. And it went down this great descent so that every one of us, through our thought, will be able now to grasp God's intelligence. Even our speech and action, which are even lower than thought, right, in the human dimension, will be able to grasp God's will and wisdom and clothe themselves in performing the commandment in speech and action. And that we were bound up with God through the speech and the action. That's more than what the soul would be on its own. The soul on its own, without a mitzvah, can't have that bond and that union and that oneness with God as we do through the act of a mitzvah, or through the speech of a mitzvah, or through the thought of study of Torah in the mitzvah. Is that clear?
Soul needs the body.
What?
So the soul needs the body connected to God because the action.
Yeah, but that's not the point over here. Correct what you're saying, but that's not the point that's being made over here. The point that's being made over here is the Torah that we have, that we think it, speak it, and action, right? The Torah mitzvahs that we have is the way that you can have a connection to the divine, to God, as opposed to the soul on its own. That soul on its own is a part of God, but now it's a soul and a body, and it doesn't have that divine connection. Even the love of the soul that it has naturally is not as great a connection as we have through the thought, speech, and action, the garments of the soul. That's the point over here. Through the garments of the soul is where we have the unique connection with the divine. Is that clear? Jeffrey's asking, do thought, speech, and actions create angels? They do if you, creating angels is not such a great thing. That's when you do it without the true love and awe of God. Then you create merely angels rather than divinity itself. So not necessarily such a good thing. Any other questions? Is it clear? Is the idea clear?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
So the Torah is compared to water, but not to light.
It's also compared to light, right? It's also compared to light. Yeah, Torah or right, but not for this purpose over here. In other words, to understand the idea that God takes the infinite of his will and wisdom, which is infinite because it's one with him. So it's infinite. God's infinite. So that which is one with him is also infinite. So his wisdom is infinite. So if his wisdom is infinite, how can we think words of Torah and comprehend it? It's going to be beyond us. How's that possible? So what God did, he contracted, he compressed the infinite and put it into finite terms of words and finite things, 613 mitzvahs, that when we do them, we're accessing God himself. How do you access him, though? Through thinking the words of Torah, speaking the words of Torah or prayer, or action-oriented mitzvahs. You have him. What's the metaphor to appreciate that? Water. Because water on top of the mountain is the same water at the bottom of the mountain. And maybe it picked up a few twigs on the way and some dirt on the way, right? Right. But the water itself is the same water. Light is not the same light that is the way it is in the sun, right? The way
why you're making that comparison, though, that's the part I don't understand. Why are you making that comparison with light we're losing the light. I understand that.
Because
Well,
that's
we're
why
not-
that's not a good metaphor for,
Oh,
that's why it's not a good metaphor to
I see.
understand the will and wisdom of God as we have it down here. Because you might think we have a lesser version over here. We don't have a lesser version. Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. It would make sense to think of it as light, and on high you get the sun. Over here you only get a ray. No, that's why that's not the metaphor. Is there a metaphor for light for Torah? Absolutely. Not in this context of the idea we want to bring across. It doesn't serve as a metaphor over here, right? Water serves as a metaphor, right? Does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Okay, I see. Clear, clear. Everybody's saying it's clear. The coast is clear.
The coast is clear. Good.
We get it.
Put a good block.
Well, we'll continue. Tomorrow we're gonna, I think we finish off this idea. This chapter 4 is a very crucial chapter. I mean, every chapter is crucial, of course, but this yeah, tomorrow we're gonna finish this chapter, and so we'll come full circle to appreciate this idea. All right. What's in the brown paper bag in the Rebbe's table? I don't know what you're talking about, Jeffrey. I didn't see it. Okay. Thank you, folks. Rambam coming up. We'll